One of the reasons why you have to be comfortable with asking questions of your bosses and coworkers is you get a lot of issues with things like the railroad. You have to treat the railroad very delicately because there's so many different rules and regulations regarding how it was owned, when they got it, what happened after they got it, what happens when they abandon the railroad, if it's condemned, however it's handled. The railroad, for the most part, was treated as a sovereign nation for a long time. They had a lot of power and control. And a lot of the railroad deeds they got before statehood, some after statehood, but for the most part, it was usually prior to 1915. There wasn't a whole lot of rules and regulations regarding oil and gas minerals back then that didn't favor those with a lot of power and money. Railroad title is going to be taken on case-by-case scenario. So you're always going to have to ask your bosses in the area that you're working in how they're handling their railroad. You could probably spend a week learning all the ins and outs of railroad, and about half of you probably quit because it's ridiculous. You can't remember it all. Or if you can, then give me your phone number so I can call you for questions that I have. We have everybody back in good manners. Royalty interest comes back up again. That's just because terminology being what it is, prior to 1950, really, there's not even really a prior to. But in Oklahoma, you'll see a lot of things that say royalty interest on them, when in fact it's a mineral interest that's being granted. It's because they didn't know the terminology. And until about 1930 or so, a lot of people separated their oil and gas minerals by calling them royalties. They didn't want to call them minerals. They didn't know they were supposed to call them minerals. They call it a royalty interest. So if I'm granting 50% of my oil and gas royalties, well, that can mean one of two things. It can mean either I'm granting you 50% of any profit that I realize from said minerals, or depending on the verbiage, it could mean I'm granting 50% of my minerals. You have to read those instruments very carefully to make sure that you are doing what it's supposed to be doing. Not everything will have an intent clause, and intent clauses are awesome. We love intent clauses. Basically, an intent clause is something you'll see at the bottom of a deed that says, hey, you know what? All this lawyer speak aside, this is what we're actually trying to do. Spells it out in layman's terms for you. You don't see them too often. But when you do, it's exciting. So you have to read those very carefully because interpretation is key on those. They thought royalties was just what they were supposed to call their minerals. They didn't know. But in the verbiage, it'll usually clarify. It will. It says, you know, I'm granting half my royalty, oil and gas to develop said, plus all executive rights. That means that they're granting them the minerals. Royalties do not have any executive rights because all it is money. Non-participating royalty interest is going to be a fractional interest that equates to nothing more than money. I'm going to grant somebody a 1/8 non-participating royalty interest. Non-participating, key. The grantee who's receiving this non-participating royalty interest doesn't participate in squat. They don't have any of the rights, any of the power, any of the authority to do anything other than cash a check when it comes to them. 1/8 interest would be 1/8 interest of any and all money realized from the grantor. The grantee owns everything, and they sign a lease at 1/8 royalty, and 1/8 of every dime that they get paid goes here on a non-participating basis.
Minus gross production.
Sorry?
Minus gross production.
Well, we'll get into that later when we get into leasehold, but yeah. There's no such thing as gross proceeds anymore. There's no such thing as that. There's been some really, really impressive terminology and clauses that come out that completely negate gross proceeds. It's brilliant. Yes, they still do. non-participating royalty interest. You're getting paid, but you don't have to sign anything. But you got to keep track of it always. We always need to know who's getting paid. Always. So we would have Party A granting to Party B 1/8 non-participating royalty interest. Party A signs a lease. Party B doesn't have to do anything. They don't sign a ratification. They don't do anything because they don't have any of the executive rights. They're just going to sit back and collect money. They get 1/8 of every single dime that Party A gets, as long as money is being produced from it. Any questions on that? Pretty clear? Okay.
And that goes down to the 6th decimal point, correct?
Yeah, it pays out. Everything that pays out money-wise is always going to be in the 6th decimal place.
Or further.
Just unlikely to be further. Some places will stop at 5. We worked for a guy that only had us run our title out to the 5th decimal place. Showed in the statute that it says 6th. So that, for our purposes, it's good enough. Maybe it is. I'm pretty sure that if somebody owns something after the 6th decimal place, they're not going to throw a fit about that 25 cents they didn't get. But they might, you know. It's their money, they're entitled to it. So maybe they should. Term interests. Term interests are exactly what they sound like. Any type of interest that you're granting, you can do for a certain amount of time. I can grant NPRIs, fractional interest. Hell, I can grant the surface. I can grant you anything I want that I own for a certain amount of time. And upon termination of the date, the reversionary interest will transfer back to myself. You see those a lot with the NPRIs. In Kansas, you can't give an NPRI out without a term. It has to have a term. So I can't just give somebody an undivided 1/8 NPRI forever. It has to be for 10 years, 25 years. I don't know if there's a limit, if you can do it for 1,000,000 years or not. I mean, that would completely negate the whole it has to have a term thing. Let me look into it. Or try it. Let's try it. Term interests, reversionary. The reversionary owner, person who it reverts back to. Now, in the meantime, the owner is still the owner. They're subject to the reversionary interest owned by. So, somebody signs an oil and gas lease, say Party A grants to Party B 100% mineral interest for 25 years. So that 25 years, Party B can sign any oil and gas lease they want. They can sell it to anybody they want to. However, at the expiration of that primary term, everything reverts back to Party A. No matter who owns it at the time. It was subject to. So if you're buying something, you might want to make sure it doesn't have a reversionary interest clause that's going to revert back to somebody else later on, whether you want it to or not.
So if we're selling something, we might want to put it in there.
Yeah, sneak it in there.
Yeah.
Make sure you put it above the warranty, though. Not below.
Right.
You guys think doing is important? Go to page 22. Important thing to remember about Duhigg is it only applies to warranty deeds. Only applies to warranty deeds. It is also the only rule I've ever seen in oil and gas that is retroactive. From the time it was introduced, it covers all time prior to. At least for statehood. I doubt that they can set rules prior to statehood regarding a state. When was statehood in Oklahoma? 1907. Yeah, I missed that last week, last class. I said 1905. Pretty sad. My defense, I'm not from here. It's poor defense. It is a really poor defense. Thank you. Where are you from? Here. Okay. Read Duhigg. Read through it carefully, and then Everybody raised their hand at once. Duhigg will make you pull your hair out. I think we still use Blackacre for that. I don't have to change that.
I haven't seen it too many
I
times.
know. Who names their tract? Blackacre. Warranty deeds. See if I can simplify this, but there's no real way to simplify it because even the second paragraph where it says basically, it tries to give you a nice little, I don't know, simplified definition is crap. It doesn't allow anything to help. Let's see, I believe. Yeah, it doesn't help at all. Unless you already know what it means, it's almost useless. It's garbage. What it amounts to is if, unless prior mineral reservations of record are specifically mentioned, then the instrument, the deed, the warranty deed, is going to have to be interpreted at the face value of what it says. That probably didn't help either. Party A grants to Party B an undivided half. This is with a warranty. They each have half. We'll start out nice and easy. These two folks have half interest. Or you could even just say, Party B has half interest. Party B grants to Party C an undivided half interest. Did I cover divided versus undivided interest? I got a feeling I did. Let's do that real quick. It's real fast. Divided interest. Of this guy's got this half, and this guy's got this half. It's divided physically. Undivided interest is they each own half of the whole. Insert whatever fraction you want. Undivided means they own a portion of the pie, just like that little business model we used earlier. It's an undivided interest. If I owned most of the building and Kenny, great name, owned the basement, that would be a divided interest. Good? Very simple. So when I say undivided interest, it means own the same piece of property. B grants to C. Who cares what A had? B grants to C an undivided 1/2 interest. Reserving an undivided 1/2 interest. Or, if we wanted to say Blackacre, we'll call it BA. C owned a half interest in the minerals. Grants B owned half. Grants to C Blackacre, reserving an undivided half minerals. Who owns what? A had a half already. B had a half. B grants to C an undivided half, or grants the land, reserving an undivided half interest. Who owns what? According to Duhigg, C now has half, B has nothing, and A has half. Unless see something referring to prior mineral reservations of record. In this case, C would only own the surface, B would have half the minerals, and A would have half the minerals. I think I lost some people in that. I almost lost myself. I can see why they use the Blackacre thing. I just still hate using it. I haven't figured out a better way to do it. We'll try it this way. Northeast quarter. A grants to B. Northeast quarter. Right? Granting an undivided 1/2 interest. This time A had 100%. So now A is half. B has half. B grants to C. The Northeast. Reserving 1/2 minerals. A had 100% of the Northeast. A granted all of the Northeast to B, reserving 1/2 of the minerals. Or granted half of the minerals. Doesn't have to be reservation. As long as the granting and the reservation language equals the same thing, doesn't matter how it's written. If I'm granting half the minerals, that means I still have the surface and half the minerals. I could have easily just said granting all of the Northeast, reserving all of the surface and half the minerals. Either way, A still has 1/2 minerals. B had half the minerals and all the surface. As of right here. B grants to C the Northeast quarter, reserving half the minerals. So what happens to B? For one, we know all of the surface goes, right? So reservation of 1/2 minerals is what's important. Who has what mineral-wise? We know this doesn't change.
So B would keep the minerals and C would keep the surface.
No.
So B would lose their half, and C would get the half minerals and the surface, and A
C
would still have half.
It's all of the surface and half the minerals. B has nothing.
Why can't they reserve their minerals?
Because they did not make specific mention of the prior reservation of record by A.
They didn't include it. Okay.
If it's not specifically mentioned, then the reservation is only about the prior reservation of record.
Gotcha.
If this were subject to, this prior reservation of record by A, then all C would have is the surface. And B would get the half minerals subject to the prior reservation
If
of
it's
record.
not talked about, it's transferred with the surface.
So why would C get all of the surface? B, whenever A gave it to B, he gave him half of the minerals, right? But not the surface.
He
Well-
said all the surface.
Yeah, he gave everything.
He gave him half the surface. He gave him everything. Half the land, half the minerals.
He retained that.
Do it that way. Does that help?
That makes more sense.
I'm sorry. A granted to B, reserving 1/2 minerals.
Okay.
So they granted all of the Northeast quarter, reserving half the minerals, meaning B had half the minerals and then all the surface. Remember?
But if B didn't reserve it, we'd go to C.
B's reservation
Like A point.
didn't make specific mention of prior reservations of record.
Right. So it only
So
C.
if B had mentioned the subject of
A.
prior reservation, C would have the surface, and B would still have the minerals.
Yes, correct. Which I think is very, very important. This may or may not be on the test. Just say. And we're going to go over this guy a few times. We're going to hit it
Unless it's specific.
at least 2 more times because I know it's an issue. It's a difficult one to wrap your head around. And this example isn't the best, and my example probably doesn't help it at all. What do you got to add, Doug, Josh? You got any other nice way of putting it?
No, I think it's been done that same way for a long time because nobody's come up with a better way to say it.
Is it safe to say this? If the minerals aren't addressed, they go with the surface.
If the minerals aren't addressed specifically, then they're always going to be included in no matter what the legal description is.
So if there's no prior reservations, they transfer with the surface.
Well, the face value of the document. Now, in this case,
Does this apply everywhere?
warranty deeds. Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas. No. Kansas does not care about Duhigg. Duhigg was a court case. Is it listed here? The P.B. Moore lumber? And it happened in, what was the year? 1940. Because there were so many issues of people thinking they had something that they didn't. Who do you think won this?
Seymour.
On the court case, who do you think won? P.B. Moore, Lumber Company versus some guy named Duhigg.
Well, it's named after
Duhigg.
Duhigg must have won. But how did he win? Doesn't matter. It's the only existing precedent that we have to follow for the state of Oklahoma. Until it gets reversed and some other new case comes out, we're going to use it.
It applies to Colorado too.
You know, I wouldn't necessarily say Duhigg won. I'd say it's a whole lot easier to say the Duhigg rule than the P.B. Moore Lumber Company rule. We might want to look it up. It's Texas. Why we use it in Oklahoma? Yeah, they don't want to do it again. That's my theory. They just don't want to have to deal with it again. Not very often that one state will just take another state's
Colorado's a Duhigg.
state ruling and go with it. Sorry?
Colorado's a Duhigg state.
They're also a Duhigg state. I don't know what it is with Kansas. Kansas is just
Easier to work Kansas?
the title in Kansas is really easy along like the southern border, just because nothing's been developed out there in so long. The stuff's pretty simple, but they just kind of thumb their noses at what we consider traditional oil and gas rules for the area. You know, here's something fun about Kansas: is there's not a north and south meridian. There's not a township identifier for north. Everything in Kansas is south. Nebraska, on the other hand, everything is north. They use the state line as if it's a meridian. Somebody said there's a map that shows back when those two states were one territory. They probably mapped it all out then. And then when they divided the states, they just went ahead and used the meridian that they had already had for the initial surveys down in 1875 or whenever it was. But at least you don't have to worry about if you're north or south, you know. Just if you're north, you're in Nebraska.
Just out of curiosity, this is probably a dumb question, but in 1875, somebody took a chain and a transit and did every square mile.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
I'm sure it's probably a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, but
They probably had some systems put in place to do it. But yeah. Took them, I don't remember the two guys that did it in Oklahoma. But I can find out. I think I already had pulled up. Let's see, it was E.N. Darling and Theodore H. Barrett. Started in 1870. Took them 3 or 4 years, that's right. No, it looks like they started in 1866 and they didn't finish until 1870. Yeah.
Spirits.
They like to be away from home, I guess. They didn't mind traveling.
That's a lot of
A
work.
lot of camping. A lot of camping. A couple of guys who really like each other. Yeah, I can't imagine, they must have just used, they probably picked points like their initial point, and they probably used what we'd see as survey equipment nowadays, their compass and their plumb bob, and they just look down their lines. No, it's all of it. The entire state. The entire state was done. So. Interesting. Everybody loves Duhigg. Only applies to warranty deeds. Keep that in mind. You see it pretty rarely. You don't run into the Duhigg issue very often, but when you do, it's nice to know. It's nice to have it on tap up here. You'll hear people say, hey, it's clearly a Duhigg issue all the time. Most of the time it's not. It's usually not a Duhigg issue at all. It's just an interpretation issue. Duhigg is pretty rare. I don't know how many times you guys run into an actual Duhigg issue.
Sometimes I think I do.
I probably have less than half a dozen times.
I'm always aware of it.
I think I do a lot, and then I get excited. Hey, that's Duhigg. Okay, it's not.
No.
I don't make a phone call until I know for sure, though, or until I don't know for sure, I guess. Rivers. We touched on rivers a little bit when it comes to lots, and we could spend a whole week talking about accretion and riparian rights and how it works. The important thing you need to know as far as Oklahoma is concerned is that there's only one navigable river in all of Oklahoma, and it's the Arkansas River. And the difference between, where's it at? Page 25. How things are owned based on your riparian rights are, if it's a non-navigable river, then you're going to own it basically to the center of the body of water.
Even as it moves with the onslaught.
Accretion, vulsion, whichever way it's going. You're going to own it to the center. If it's a navigable body of water, how many are there in Oklahoma? Yeah, you're probably not going to be doing a whole lot of mineral research on the Arkansas River. But if it's a non-navigable, then it's only going to go up to its highest water line. Highest water mark?
It's navigable.
If it's navigable, right? You're only going to be able to own up to the highest water mark of the river itself. Accretion. Is the natural, or the tendency for rivers and streams to naturally move their paths from time to time. A river that looked like that 100 years ago might look like that now. And as long as it happened over time naturally, then your ownership will change with it. Party A owns this particular lot. And as time goes by, the river changes course over a 100-year period or so. All of a sudden now they own all this too.
So do you see differences in the acreage associated with property exchange?
You betcha, yeah.
Cool.
Not really. It's not cool at all. It's a huge pain in our ass because once again, unless it's a government survey, unless it's an official government survey, we can't really use it. So if the only survey we have from 1875 is this, but now we know the river looks like this, well, this guy still, as far as we know, owns only a certain amount of acres that is on the survey. Now, if they have two surveys, they did one in 1985 and they show this acreage, well, they can still use either one of those surveys. Likely they're going to use the most current. Or you might see a private organization, commercial entity comes in and does some aerial photos, and they'll file their own survey from a private company standpoint. Unless it's done in official capacity, sanctioned by the county, doesn't count. So now you have multiple reports that you need to write based on the possibility that they're going to go ahead and recognize this particular survey as governmental. Government's not supposed to allow trust to just be placed in private entities and just say, yeah, we believe you, and we'll go ahead and make that official. They got to do their own. Who wants to do that?
Curiosity. Avulsion spelled with an A in here. Is
It
that the
was
same?
okay. Yeah, no.
Just asking.
Well, I spelled it that way first.
Accretion and avulsion are the same thing, correct?
Yes, it's either gaining or losing.
Well, accretion happens over a long period of time, and avulsion.
Okay, that's the one I
Sudden
put.
incident.
Yes, this is sudden. I'm sorry. So accretion is gaining and losing over time. And avulsion is quickly, like a natural disaster, earthquake, or an icy quake-nado, like Oklahoma has all the time. It happens quickly. Acreages don't change. All of a sudden, there's a flash flood or something, and it just completely wipes out the riverbed and redirects it somewhere else. Well, it doesn't matter because it happened quickly due to some type of natural disaster or something. The acreages don't change.
Until government research.
Well, even a government survey would be allowed to do something to change that. They can't. The government survey is not allowed to say who owns what.
No, it's just a measurement.
What about, say, for instance, if there's like a huge flash flood that changes the course of the river,
Then the ownership will remain the same way it was prior to that huge flash flood. I've never gotten into something like that though.
like say a few years later, then they do a survey and determine that the river has now changed and officially.
I haven't run into that before, but I imagine that it might be able to work. But my question, it makes you wonder though, is if there's the river that's running, nice, such and such. Somebody owns all this, and somebody else owns all this. And all of a sudden the flash flood comes and it does this. Well, this guy's still going to own to here. But for how long? If this meanders slowly over time up here, you ever run into anything like that? You have? What happens? I mean, this was avulsion. So this remained the same all the way to here. But then this was accretion.
Well,
So
usually
just chop it.
you got the same guy that owns on either side of the river.
Oh, and that lucky
matter.
circumstance,
You
we don't
walk
care
out,
anyway.
But I mean, you'll have one lot on one side of the river and another lot. So somebody's gaining acreage and the next guy's losing acreage. But if that river just suddenly moves, they're not going to just take all that land away from him.
Right, that's not what I'm asking though. This happened through avulsion. So everything that was owned here remained the same with A. And everything that's down here remained the same with B. How long until any kind of normal accretion that might happen later on down the road is taken into account with the avulsion?
So the one instance I saw of it, they just retained the same ownership as
Forever?
forever. They claim
So
the
they
lots were the same
completely
size.
disregard accretion just because avulsion occurred?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's happened on it's handled on a case.
It's probably in Dewey County. You ever get a chance to work in Dewey County? Don't.
Yeah.
Dewey County is horrible. Because apparently there's 600 rivers that run through there.
Is Tologa
And they're always changing.
county seat of Dewey?
Yeah. And there's one place to eat there and it's not good. That's how I judge whether or not a place is a good place to work or not. How many restaurants there are. How good the food is. If you're working in Stillwater, hey, you're good. Doesn't matter how bad the title is, it's still a great place to work. If you're working in, say, Seminole County, doesn't matter how easy the title is, it's still a sucky place to work. And the title there is the worst title in all of Oklahoma, by the way. So it's double sucky. Seminole County, the worst title in all of Oklahoma.
Most of my stuff's at Gold Lakes,
Is it?
which is, you know,
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Woke.
I'm sorry. It's difficult.
What's the
Say
best
that
county?
county. Best county? Depends. I mean,
Pittsburgh County.
you like to stay in hotels? Pittsburgh County was fun. Yeah, it was good. Pittsburgh County. I didn't know Pittsburgh County was as hard as it was. That's where I got my training, where I learned that about Tyler. I didn't realize that there were counties, say like Grant County. There's a good one. by the way, super easy title. Super easy.
All square.
Yeah, you know, you might have what, 25 conveyances from statehood till today for the whole section, maybe less in some cases. It's easy, but there also is going to be really difficult sections. No matter where you go, there's going to be easy and difficult. The more populated a county is, the more difficult it's usually going to be. Just based on there's more people that have been vying for the same land for 100 years, just trying to get their fingers in it. Things change. Every place has got difficult issues.
So you work title under cities, like
Sorry?
Stillwater? You would be doing title under cities?
Not typically, because what you'll have is your town side additions are going to be incorporated, and those can get really, really, really disgusting. Most oil and gas companies, they don't like to deal with all that crap. You know, you go down to like Crossroads Mall and you see a gas pump in the parking lot.
Yeah.
That was probably pretty easy to do because it's all, I imagine, owned by the same area. You know, the city probably owns the dumps right there and everything else. Great place for a mall. But then you'll go into some neighborhoods in like Mustang or Oklahoma City, and you'll find inside of a housing addition there'll be a gas pump. Well, that was probably a huge pain in the butt to run title because it's owned and broken up by lots and lots and lots of folks for a long time.
Or it was there before, way before.
If it was there way before, that's great because it was already done.
Well, like Stillwater's experiencing horizontal drilling under the town. They're dealing with each house.
Oh yeah, yeah. Any person, we'll get into that tomorrow, but in a section, 640 acre unit, we'll say it's gas. A 640 acre unit. Any area that's unitized, every single person, every single mineral owner in here, even if there's a million of them, has to be accounted for one way or the other for drilling. It sucks.
Prior to drilling.
Well, if you don't do it prior to drilling, then let's say somebody owns 10 acres. And they drill a hole without getting them leased or pooled. They drill a hole to 8,000 feet and it starts producing. Well, these guys just got a free ride to the bottom of the hole. They're getting paid 100% of their 10 acres. They don't have to pay, they're not getting a portion of royalties for every dollar. They're getting 100% of every dollar that comes out based on their 10 acres from that unit. And oil companies and gas companies, they don't like to give away free money.
What do you do for roads?
What do you mean?
Like, county owns.
Right of ways.
Okay.
Just a right of way, just surface. Pay damages.
You gotta drill through that. You don't have to pay the county to go under their road.
Well, they'll never drill through a road.
Under the road.
Yeah, they'll drill underneath it.
Right.
Whoever owns the minerals of those things get paid. If it's the county, sure. If it's the state, okay. If it's a mineral owner, fine. Well, either one of those two could be a mineral owner. So if it's a person, corporation, whatever. Whoever the owner is got to get paid.
You gotta take into account when you're leasing it, the road, or the acreage.
What's that?
It's taking into account the acreage the road's taken up if you've granted an easement and stuff. It's like,
Sure.
so,
Depends
it's
on
only little.
the verbiage when it comes to easements and right of ways and things like that. Around 1930 or so, they started getting smart about how they handle that stuff. A lot of times, prior to that, they might just do a warranty deed and they're granting an easement. And that's all it says, an easement. And it might not specify reservations or what they're granting. And they might just screw it up. Well, they could be giving the minerals as well to, the state or the highway department or whatever it is they're doing. Then later on, they decide, if it says if it's for an easement, no matter what type of conveyance it is, then it is just surface for an easement.
I was talking about when you do an oil and gas lease, you're paying them for their acreage.
Who?
And the landowner.
Yeah.
And you gotta take into account, if they got 40 acres and there's 5 roads running through it.
Oh yeah.
You pay 40 acres.
Well, the thing about, if we're talking surface as well, is
Yeah, that's what I'm talking, service.
yeah, prior to I want to say prior to about 2005, the surface owners had so little protection that it didn't really matter. I mean, as you'll see in these oil and gas leases and these mineral deeds and things, it's always specific saying that the mineral owner has every right in the world to develop their ownership, and the surface owner doesn't get squat to say about it. The only thing you have to take into consideration are things like the state of Oklahoma has decided saying you can't put a pump jack within 200 feet of a house, or whatever the lease says, it might be 500 feet or 300 feet. But I think the closest you can build one is 200 feet to an existing dwelling, not just a building, but a dwelling. Like you can't put one in somebody's front porch. It's got to be 200 feet away. They've gotten a lot better at giving surface owners a lot more rights, paying them damages. I mean, for the most part, they always pay them damages, but they didn't really have to. They just didn't want to raise a stink. Nowadays, they're a lot better at negotiating surface leases with surface owners to say, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to build some roads out to this pad that we're going to pour. We're going to try to do it in a way that doesn't interfere too much with your day-to-day operations. If you're a cattle owner, you've got a ranch, we'll put in cattle guards and barbed wire fence wherever we need to. Make sure no cows are going to get killed by our pump jacks or our trucks or whatnot. Do they have to do that? Hell no. They don't. Because those mineral deeds that were granted mineral, they're given all the executive rights to develop that stuff as much as they want. It's just awfully nice of the companies to go ahead and say, okay, we'll protect you.
It's good PR.
It's very good PR. Very good PR. And PR is very important nowadays, especially with all the stuff we've been seeing the last 2 years.
In Colorado too, especially.
With the fracking.
Tree huggers.
Big issues.
Oh my God.
We hope that fracking is never made illegal in Oklahoma, Texas, or any of the areas where we're working. We'd like to see it completely legalized everywhere, except for maybe where we have our own houses.
Yeah, in my backyard.
All right. On page 27, you'll see an example, a quick example of an index. It's a really nice example.
We have nice enough writing.
Somebody should be able to recognize this particular index quickly. Anyone? This is Grant County. Grant County is a very easy county, and it's also very convenient because they separate their entire sections into quarter sections for you. So you'll have, 10 pages in the Northeast and 10 pages in the Southwest and so on. It's really nice. Most places don't care. They're not that nice, and it's just going to be one big pile of numbers. What section are we in?
Eight.
Township?
26.
What is that? 26 what? Well, it's going to be north or south. It's a township.
South.
It's not south. You got to know where Grant County is. Medford, Oklahoma. North of the initial point.
Oh,
So it's north. What's the other one? What's the range? 6? It's west. They don't really have to put that on there because they know where they are. We got this from the courthouse. If you don't know where you're at when you're in the courthouse, there's issues. What quarter section is it? Southwest. Let me show you an example of one I'm working on. It's not as fun as that. Here's a copy of the entire index for section 17, 17 North, 5 East, Payne County, Stillwater. It's nasty. It's heavy. And there's tons and tons and tons of information. They don't divide things up nicely. Pass it around. Please don't disorganize it, definitely. You'll see in this one,
This is nice.
you have the nature of the instrument. First column on the left, type of instrument. You'll see abbreviations, and you'll get used to those and know what they mean. Sometimes you'll still have to ask. Like an FR is the first thing you see. Well, for one, you got to know if that's an F. Not exactly easy until you get used to it. It's a final receipt. What a final receipt is, nothing more than somebody bought something, in this case from the government, and this is in probably 1900, 1905. 1901, okay. In 1901, we didn't have airplanes. We didn't have email. We didn't have cars. You couldn't just buy a deed and then run and get it signed. This is coming from the United States government. which means it has to be signed by the President of the United States. Who was president in 1901?
Roosevelt.
One of the Roosevelts, right? If you look at the next page, it'll tell you. Teddy? Yeah, it's Teddy. If you go to page 29, you see down at the bottom of that instrument that it was signed by Teddy Roosevelt. But this final receipt had to be filed. It might be years before this patent shows back up in Oklahoma to be filed in the courthouse. So the final receipt's put in there that says, here it is. But it's not an actual conveyance. It's just a record that something happened. So if you look at that patent, you see that it was signed the first day of April in the year of our Lord, 1903. So it took them 2 years just to get to the White House, or whatever house they lived in back then, to be signed by either that guy or somebody who did his signature for it. And then it had to come all the way back here. Type of instrument: patents, mortgages, assignments, warranty deeds, quitclaim deeds, affidavits. You're going to see a lot of shorthand. Abbreviations, and you're going to have to learn those, or at least get familiar with them. You'll still run into some occasionally that you don't recognize and you have to ask. Other courthouses do things differently.
What are the numbers in the left column?
I'm sorry?
What are these numbers in the left, far left?
That's W.
Oh, those are image numbers. Somebody's taking pictures of all of this, and so you can find it when you were given a file.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
If you're running
It's all
title
very
from disk.
organized. These were very organized.
If you're running title from disk, you might have an imager that did all this stuff. But,
Or not.
well, yeah, if you're running title from disk, you're always going to have all the images. You're going to have to. You're going to hope you have all the images. But
As we
You
look
mean
at
like
this,
microfiche that got,
no disk. Like on your computer. Not the microfiche. Those things are difficult. Most counties don't even use those. I haven't seen one place that does microfiche since we stopped working out east.
And I think they were trying to get rid of them. They were trying to copy them. And
Yeah, just get uploaded into the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
They're awful ways of doing things.
you never have to go back and check something you didn't have.
All the time. Imagers a lot of times are less than thorough. So you might end up getting some missed documents, or they took pictures of the wrong book and page, or who knows, they got their thumb in the way. They didn't care when they put it on disk. Stuff happens. So yeah, a lot of times you'll have to get stuff fixed, or call it in and have it fixed for you. What's the next column? The date of instrument. Now, depending on what you're looking at, that might be the date that it was signed, or it might be the date it was filed. Some counties like to do both. They'll have the file date as well as the instrument date. Either way, all this thing is, this index that you're looking at, all it is a frame of reference. You'll never do anything from this other than gather information of what you're actually supposed to be looking at. It's nothing more than an index. What do you do with your index on any other type of book? You look at it to see where you need to go. That's all it's for. What's the next column? The grantor. And that is who? In general. Who is the grantor? Person losing something. Losing, granting, getting rid of. Next column?
Receiving.
Person getting something. Next column?
Description of property.
Right, in this case, these are all going to be a portion of the southwest quarter. Might be the east half of the southwest of the southwest. But because Grant County is so nice to separate these out into individual quarter sections for us, this particular example will always be something in the southwest quarter. The one that I passed around you're looking at did not separate things out nicely like that. They just threw them all in one book. And that's what you got to get used to, because most places don't separate these out nicely. They make you do it yourself. Next column. That is what is important to us, because that is where we're going to get our information. index is a nice little frame of reference. It'll tell us who the grantor or the grantee are, possibly. But we need to look at that book and page to find out exactly what it is, what the right dates are. Go to your patent. Who's the grantor? Who's the grantee? What is being granted?
Southwest grantor of section 8.
Southwest quarter. Yeah, I know.
Quarter of section 8.
West of the Indian Meridian in Oklahoma, containing 160 acres. When it comes to patents, people use different dates. Some people want to use the date for like final receipt. Some people want to use the date that it was filed. Typically, I'll use the date the president's signature is on. Down the bottom right.
How about this deluxe seal?
Sorry?
They're like seal.
Yeah. Pretty nice. That's pretty nice.
I was just gonna say, speak to that.
Go ahead.
This was put in here before you had copy machines, so what would happen is they would take the actual document, and someone would sit there and write this whole thing out, and then they'd give the document back to the grantee and say, okay, now it's filed.
So they have the right seal.
It was nice once they got these pre-printed ones, but even before that, if you're looking, then you're looking at a huge book with just this big cursive writing for this entire instrument. So you'll see things like just their name. You won't have a signature, or just will say seal. They'll make a nice little up there, it's a seal.
First thing that happened. And what book and page is that?
It says 288.
You can use your index for that. Usually when you're pulling your book and page, you have the book and page in front of you, so it's a lot easier. When you get copies, it's not always that easy. What's the book of the page of the patent? Book 5, page 159. Is that right?
Oh, top, yeah.
Oh, I'm like,
What's the one above?
Yeah.
Recorded at the bottom.
What are you talking about?
It says recorded Oklahoma volume 96, page 184,
Very bottom of
What they
this.
quarter?
on the homestead.
I see it.
Very bottom. of
Homestead
the
patent
document.
records.
No, we don't care. Because whatever book and page is actually in is the one we're using. Who knows why they did that? Maybe they switched the books at one point or another.
Federal.
I mean,
Care about the book and page.
if you pull book 96, page 184, chances are it's not going to be this instrument because this instrument was filed at book 5, page 159
Where do you have this find that?
in the index.
It's also at the top of the document.
Remember.
I see 159, I don't find it.
Keep in mind that you didn't even know where to find this particular instrument until you pulled book 5, page 159, based on what the index said. Right?
So if we're looking here, we're looking at where it says patent under name of insurance.
Patent.
Not in the.
Final receipt. Yeah, we just didn't have it. We don't have it. I'm not going to give you guys a copy of everything because that'd be
Oh, really?
It's what I was thinking.
Oh, yeah.
That's his book too.
Oh, my eyes. Yeah.
So we wouldn't even know, we wouldn't have even seen this instrument if we didn't go to book 5, page 159. So that's how we know what book and page it's in. If you go to book 5, page 159, and it's not this particular patent, you better raise your hand and ask one of those nice ladies to help you find the right book. Because you're going to find, especially early on in statehood, that they have 10 different kinds of books. 10 different kinds. They got patent books, warranty deed books, quitclaim books, leasing books, mortgage records. They've got it all. Miscellaneous records. And until who knows what year, but it seems that every single courthouse in at least all of Oklahoma, they finally got their act together and decided, you know what, this is pointless. Let's just record book. We'll put every type of instrument all in one type of book. Saves us a lot of time and hassle. What's the date on it?
May 6th, 1907.
You sure? Date is signed, down at the bottom.
First day of April.
1903. And it wasn't filed in Oklahoma until when?
6th day of May, 1907.
Right. So it didn't even make it back to Oklahoma from the presidential signing until 4 years later. So things haven't really changed that much. Not as far as getting things accomplished in government anyway.
So I would have filed that title before they did?
Sorry?
If I could have filed it something in before they did, I would have done it. Did it apply back?
No, because the final receipt shows that somebody actually paid for it. Now. I mean, I don't know how you would file something else without showing actual ownership. This is coming from the United States government.
Oh, true. Okay.
Grantor is who?
I'm so tired. I'm gonna take the government.
USA. Grantee is who? What's his name?
Wilbur.
Needs to be exactly as it appears. Wilbur what?
J. Haskins is INS.
Is it I or is it J?
Is that an I or
It's J.
Yeah, see. Exactly as it appears. In some cases, honestly, I'll just look at what it does, and if it does this, then I'll just do that. We'll figure out what it means later. Exactly as it appears. I don't know how to interpret some of their handwriting, so it's silly, but you do what you got to do.
Oh, it's an I. Because look at Indian.
Look at the index, might be able to tell you.
If you look at word-
Pretty sure it's an F.
No, if you look at
Just because the next instrument shows W.F. Haskins.
Oh, God, yeah.
it's an I. Does it tell me what this is?
Doesn't matter. We're not worried about it right now. The important part is if it's granted a certain way, that's exactly how you need to reflect it. We don't need to have W.J. Haskins or Wilbur J. No Haskins. If it says Wilbur J. Haskins, it needs to be on that. Because if he's the owner right now and we're leasing him, he's the owner. We want him to sign his name exactly as he's the owner. Because it might be two separate people. We don't know. W. Haskins might not be the same person as Wilbur J. Haskins. And it'd be wrong in an oil and gas lease if it wasn't Wilbur J. Haskins. Assuming that's J. Many times we put Wilbur scribble Haskins as long as they look the same. What is being granted?
Southwest
160 acres.
Southwest quarter. Well, we know it's 160 acres anyway, right? Because
Right.
what's Section 8? Is it a correction section? No, so the Southwest quarter is 160 acres, yeah. Right. It's nice to have it on there anyway, but you don't really need to, as long as you know how big it is. Surface minerals, what? All right, title and interest, everything. We got the surface and the minerals. USA did it all. So here you go. What's our next instrument?
Sheriff's deeds.
Sheriff's deeds. Love those, don't we? What's it do?
Sells off the property for that thing.
Gives the sheriff.
Read through it. What's it doing? This is the bread and butter of what you guys do, by the way, is reading these conveyances, interpreting them to find out who owns what.
Strengthen the sheriff.
And you'll get used to reading all this
Frank County, Southwest Florida.
legalese eventually. Or you can, find a job as a leasing agent or an imager or whatever else there is.
It said I.
Sorry?
It wasn't I.
Yeah? I see WF Haskins up top.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, WF is one of the heirs.
Oh, we were with Will.
Yeah? How do you know?
We're just assuming.
Making an ass out of yourself, aren't you?
Well, they have a 1/15, so.
It's likely. Very likely. Doug ran title on this one, so what is it, Doug?
They're the heirs.
They're the heirs.
I don't remember. The probate obviously is not in here.
Right.
Maybe it was up in the court.
It's filed probably up in the court records.
Dad died and they took the farm.
Looks like it was broken up, several.
At one point, our guy who owned it likely died. There's a probate file that you're not going to find usually in these indexes. If he died in this county, in Grant County, he probably did. He just got the minerals from the U.S. Probably didn't move. People don't move around back then like they do today. It's likely that he died. When he did, things were either transferred out through the laws of intestate succession, or he had a probate and everything was split up amongst his heirs. In which case, that would be filed in the court clerk's office, not in the county clerk's office. It wouldn't be indexed here. You have to go find it upstairs, or usually it's upstairs for some reason, across the hall, another building if you're in Payne County. But either way, you're going to find out who got his stuff when he died. In this case, it doesn't matter, because the sheriff's deed comes along, puts it all in one big pile again, and gives it to T.E. Krause and the wife. Let me see. Nope, just T.E. Krause. T.E. Krause got it all. And the next instrument, T.E. Krause, turns around and gives it to
His wife.
Book 292, page 517, otherwise known as page 31 here. T.E. Krause and his wife, who joins him, are granting it to T.E. Krause and his wife. Is that Lois? Lois.
I just wanted to.
Or F, yeah. As
Oh, they did, didn't they? Just
what type of tenancy?
Tenants in common.
Josh, you're not allowed to shout next to that. Tenants in common. Because the type of tenancy does not specify. So tenants in common.
I know. Cost me
That was one of the things where you get this very quick thing you said you want to see one time.
Yeah, they can do tenants by the entirety, but it's pointless. And in this case, they wouldn't do it because they were doing tenants in common, not joint tenants.
So you're saying husband and wives are usually tenants, joint tenants?
There's not anything that says husband and wife have to be anything. There's nothing that you'll ever see that says they're going to be usually one way or the other. Husband and wife denotes nothing other than common law issues. In which case, the only thing that common law applies here is the fact that the top, the grantors, are who? T.E. Krause and Lois Krause, his wife. Was she an owner? No. She was not an owner. She was the wife of the owner, T.E. Krause, which means she had common law rights to the property, but she was not an owner. He was the owner.
You were saying earlier.
If he dies, she gets, according to the laws of intestate succession, depending on what year it is, if it's 1980 or prior, 83,
So it doesn't have.
it's 1/3. After that, it's 1/2.
So you were saying earlier if they had the word or.
She is on the deed granting. We're talking about prior to. So the deed prior to T.E. Krause was the sole owner, right?
Right.
Sheriff's deed, T.E. Krause had it all. Then in 292-517, T.E. Krause and his wife joins him as a grantor. She's signing away, in this case, for common law rights. However, because they're granting it to themselves, it doesn't matter anyway. But if they were granting it to a third party, if he was granting it to Jesse, get a name tag back, she would still need to appear on it because she's signing away her rights, common law rights.
Why are they granting it?
They were specifying that she is now a full
Oh, that's
owner.
his way of doing it.
Yeah.
So instead of saying
Just
she's
saying
had,
she's-
okay, he's just saying,
Yeah, it gets away, if any ambiguity regarding what happens when I die.
okay.
Don't have to worry about it. She now owns her half and he owns his half. You don't have to worry about the whole laws of intestate succession, except for the other half that he still owns. Good?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions about that? About the common law issues? About how things are owned?
So is that because he forgot to put and wife? Because he ended a lot of stuff back over here and he put and wife, but I'm not sure when he did put and wife.
Doesn't matter.
Didn't matter?
No. The index doesn't mean squat. All it is a frame of reference. You will never, ever run title from an index. Ever. All you do is you use it as a reference to find book and pages that you run title on. An index is nothing. Would you do that if you were looking something up? Would you flip to the index of a book and then just assume that, oh, okay, it's there, we'll call it good? For anything. I mean, an index is nothing more than tell you where else to go to get the information that you need.
You mentioned something about if they use the word or rather than and. That would
Right. If, in this case, in this particular instrument that you're looking at, is warranty deed from T.E. Krause, 292.517, page 31. If it had said T.E. Krause and or Lois F. Krause, then it would be considered joint tenancy. But it doesn't, so it's tenants in common. Just the word or denotes joint tenancy. Good. In Kansas, and they've been doing this for years, and I don't know why. In Kansas, they've been treating husband and wife as joint tenants. If it's A granting to A and B, comma, husband and wife, they've been treating that as joint tenancy for a long time. It is wrong. Husband and wife does not mean squat other than, hey, they're married. What do you do? Common law rights mean she still has, or he still has, whoever the spouse is, of the receiving party, they still have rights to it, but they don't have ownership of their spouse's property. It's going to be subject to common law laws, rules for whatever state they're in. Laws of intestate succession, that sort of thing. How that works for marketable title, I have no idea for Kansas. They've just been treating it that way for so long that when you tell them it's not legal, the lawyers up there think it's legal. Oh, the one I talked to, he wasn't a very good lawyer. Or maybe he was a great lawyer. I don't know. Maybe he knew exactly what he wasn't doing.